There we go.
All right, you can see my slides.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, perfect. All right, so we are going to be talking about bird identification tonight. Before we do that, I'm just going to let you know my name is Chris Goforth. I'm the head of collaborative science at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I am in charge of creating experiences for our visitors to participate in authentic science. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these projects out there that you can take part of as a non-scientist or maybe a scientist in another field. I'm an entomologist by training, and I do a lot of other things like I document clouds and phenology and birds and lots of insects, of course. I think it's a lot of fun. But one of the things that I really love working with is birds. I never expected to become a bird person. I always swore I wasn't going to become a bird person because I was going to be an entomologist, and birds tend to eat my animals. Some of my animals eat birds too. So it sometimes turns around the other way, but there's a lot of amazing birds in North Carolina. So when I moved here and started working at the museum and was teaching people how to participate in these collaborative science projects, birds became a really big part of what I do. So tonight we're going to be talking about kind of introduction to bird identification. And if you are willing to participate, this is going to be a pretty interactive kind of thing tonight. We're going to be doing some things together. Actually, just remembering, I forgot to slide one thing over. I'm going to slide one thing onto my screen here really quickly and go back to my slides because I forgot one thing I needed. There we go. So we're going to be doing some interactive things tonight where I'm going to ask you some questions and have you answer in the chat. We're going to be doing kind of a little drawing activity a little bit where I'm going to draw some things up on the screen based on some observations you make. So this is meant to be very interactive. So if you want to, when we get to the drawing part, I'm happy for you to just unmute and say what you want to say out loud, or you can put it in the chat. I'm going to be watching the chat the whole time. Okay, so let's introduce the plan for tonight. This is my favorite bird here. This is the Gambel's quail. It is one of many birds that is about to get renamed because it has the name of a person in it. There's a push to get rid of all the people names for birds. So I don't know what this quail will become, but this is the native quail that lives in Arizona, where I was born and lived for a very long time, and I love it. It has that little top knot on it. They're very cute. Their little babies have little racing stripes on them. They're just adorable, adorable birds, and I love them. But what we're going to do tonight, we're going to go over a strategy called the 4 keys to bird ID. So these are 4 things that you can look at to kind of narrow down all of the birds down to a subset of birds where you can look to find the one that you're looking at. We are going to practice making some good bird observations. So we're going to take a look at a bird and see how many things we can see on it. So we can practice some of those quick observations. As you know, birds move around. They move around pretty quickly. And so being able to make a quick observation of a bird can be really, really valuable. So we'll practice that a little bit tonight. And we're going to explore some bird identification resources, a few that are online and some field guides as well. And so you'll have an opportunity to see what kinds of things you might want to use to identify birds for yourself. Okay. So let's talk about the 4 keys to bird ID. So these are things that are promoted by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and a bunch of other ornithologists and bird enthusiasts as a way to kind of just take all that huge number of birds. There's something like 10,000 plus species of birds, and it's a lot. So we use these 4 keys to bird ID to take those 10,000 birds down to 15 or 20 birds. And so then you have a lot fewer that you need to look through to find the bird that you're specifically looking at. So the first key to bird ID is the size and shape. And so these things can tell you a lot about what you're looking at. So if you want to think about how large the bird is relative to a bird that you know, that can be really helpful. And a lot of times, scientists and birders will use a kind of standard 4 birds to compare the sizes to. So you have a sparrow, an American robin, a crow, and a goose. Usually Canada goose is the biggest one. So you're kind of comparing the bird that you are looking at to one of these, because that will tell you approximately how big it is. If you know kind of approximately how big your bird is compared to one of these others, you can kind of figure out the size of it in a field guide pretty easily. You also want to think about how the body parts are proportioned. So American crows and fish crows look really similar. They have a very different call, but their beaks are a little bit different shaped. And so you can tell those apart based on the beak and the size. Ravens have an even bigger, thicker beak than the crows do. So you can kind of tell all these kind of big black birds apart based on kind of the size of their beak, like how tall it is relative to how long it is, how wide it is across their face, whether it has like a little hook or not. Those kinds of things can tell you a lot about which bird you're looking at. You can also look at the shape of the bird, and the silhouette of a bird can tell you a lot about what it is. So I'm going to be willing to bet that you all can probably identify these two birds. And so if you want to put them in the chat, what A and B are, I would love to see if you are able to identify these with no information other than just the shape. And I'm betting several of you will be able to do this. Some answers coming in. Mostly we're seeing northern cardinal and great blue heron. Got one more person typing. Okay, there we go. Yep. Okay, so we've got um exactly what you said. A is a cardinal, B is a great blue heron. And so no other information than just the body shape was enough to tell you pretty much what these birds are. Now, this heron could have been an egret potentially, but they stand just a little bit differently. And the cardinal could have potentially been something like a titmouse, but you know, they're proportioned a little bit differently. So you're able to tell a lot just based on the shape alone with no other information. Okay, so the second key to bird ID is the color and the patterns on the bird. And so these things can tell you a lot about which bird you're looking at. And so you want to think about what colors you see on the bird and what kind of patterns you see on the bird as well. So this is a eastern bluebird. They've got a kind of stereotypical pattern that you'll see. So they've got blue on their heads and their backs and their wings. They've got this kind of rusty color on their chests usually, and then kind of a cream colored lower part of their body. And so pretty much all of them have about this same pattern. And you can, if you get to know kind of this pattern on this bird, you'll start to recognize them when you see them in new places. And then the patterns that you see as well. So if they have like a lot of woodpeckers have like a ladder back pattern. And so they have mostly black wings, but they've got these white spots that are kind of arranged in kind of rows. And so you have these kind of patterns over and over on the bird's back. You can also look at where the patches of colors are. And the patches of color can frequently tell you which bird you're looking at pretty much right away. A patch of color that stands out from the rest of the bird can tell you a whole lot about what it is. So we're going to look at these two birds now. These two birds are ones that people mix up all the time because there is a bird called a red-headed woodpecker, and both of these have red heads. So I'm wondering if any of you can guess which one is the red-headed woodpecker versus the other one. So if you want to take a stab at which one the red-headed woodpecker is in the chat. A little less certain of these, but that's totally acceptable because these two can be a little bit trickier to tell apart. All right, most people are saying A is the red-headed and B is not the red-headed, and people are suggesting red-bellied. And you're right. So A is the red-headed woodpecker and B is the red-bellied woodpecker. These are just a little tricky because if you don't see them together, they both have red heads. And so a lot of times when people are brand new to birding, if they hear something like red-headed woodpecker and they see a red-bellied woodpecker, which has a big red patch on its head, it might come off as a red-headed woodpecker, but they've also got this red patch on their belly, which makes them very different than the red-headed woodpecker. Plus, the red-headed woodpecker's red head is really red, and it's the whole head is red, versus this kind of more orangey red. And they look just a little bit different. So looking for those kind of pops of color, where they've got color, where they've got patterns, those can tell you a lot about which bird you're looking at. Okay, the third key is the behavior. So what your bird is doing, because different birds will be doing different things. Sorry, my dog is about to come downstairs and bark. So this is a nuthatch. This is a white-breasted nuthatch in particular. And nuthatches are really well known for kind of facing down when they are standing on a branch or a trunk of a tree or a feeder. They tend to hop downwards on trees, and it's thought that they're doing that because woodpeckers and other things go up the tree. And so they're picking off the insects that they can see kind of looking up, and nuthatches are picking off the insects they can see going down. And so you'll frequently see nuthatches with their heads kind of out like this, and their body kind of pressed up against a tree trunk or a feeder, whatever they happen to be on. So what they're doing, that body position, how they move, those can tell you a lot about what you're looking at. Where your bird is spending its time can also tell you a lot about what it is. And so one of these is a turkey vulture. Turkey vultures are soaring birds. They spend a lot of time in the air. So which one of these two do you think is the turkey vulture? Just based on behavior alone. And I think several of you know what turkey vultures look like to begin with. So, this is probably an easy one. All right, everyone's saying the same for this one. Yeah, so B is our turkey vulture. They like to hold their wings open and ride thermals. And so you'll see them kind of, tilting back and forth with their wings up a little bit at the end. And the wings kind of positioned in a V shape, V for vulture. They'll ride those thermals, and so they'll kind of just tilt in the air. But they're frequently up in the air. We most often see them flying in the air rather than on the ground. So where the bird is spending its time can tell you a lot. This is another heron. This is a tricolored heron. They will rest on the tops of trees a lot of times. And so this is another kind of good thing to look out for. Okay, and then the last one is habitat. So the space that those birds like to occupy is really important. So the first thing to think about is whether a bird is found in your area or not. So for example, I live in Raleigh. I would imagine a lot of you are in Raleigh as well, since you're coming to a lecture at Lake Johnson. But this is a white ibis. That is a very common bird on the coast of North Carolina. Now, if you see this bird inland, like if we see this in Raleigh, this would be a very, very, very exciting bird because it would be way outside of its normal space. And if you put this on eBird, which is a place that you can share your bird observations with scientists, people would show up in droves to come see this bird in Raleigh because it's not a bird that you normally find here. But if you're out on the coast, you see these all the time. And so the part of the world that they occupy can be really important, but also what kind of environment the bird is in to begin with. So certain birds like wetlands, others like marshes, some like deserts, some like forests, some like open grassy fields, some like urban environments. And so that environment can be really important for identifying it. Okay, so I got one more question for you here. Which bird is the red-winged blackbird? And I'm not giving you the one with the red wing to make it easy. And the hint is that red-winged blackbirds are a marsh species. So they like to be in marshy areas. I'm getting most agreement. All right. Well, if you've spent any time in a wetland, you know that cattails are a really important wetland plant, and you'll see them frequently in marshy areas and other wetland areas. And so this is a female red-headed or female red-winged blackbird on a cattail here. They actually build their nest in cattail clusters, and so they'll kind of knit together these cattails into a cup shape, and then they'll lay their eggs inside of that. And so you'll frequently see the females in these marshy areas. The males might be a little bit further away. And during the winter, you might see them in really large numbers in different spaces. And so, for example, if you go to the Pungo unit of Pocosin National Wildlife Refuge, they get millions of red-winged blackbirds there in the winter because there's all this corn that has been left out for birds there, and they take advantage of that. And so you might not always see them in marshy areas, but if you see a bird that looks like a really big sparrow hopping around in a marshy area, a red-winged blackbird is a real possibility. And then this is an American crow down here. I just love crows, so I like to put pictures of them in my slides. Okay, if you are interested, I have a printable version of this that you can download. I'm not going to put it in the chat, but it's just tinyurl.com/birdidbasics. And so if you happen to want a paper copy, you can print one out for yourself. It also has some field marks on the back. So we're not going to talk about field marks too much today. Field marks are the really specific markings on a bird that help you identify the exact species. And so that can be like a stripe through the eyes. It could be a patch of color on their head. It could be a color that they have on their breast. Or a pattern. It's usually a pattern. And so field marks can be really important, but if you're a beginning birder, field marks are intense because there's a lot of really specific things. It's a lot easier to look at kind of these 4 keys rather than the field marks first, but the field marks are on there. So when you're a little bit more advanced, you can feel like you have those available. Okay, so we are going to make some observations of a bird. So what we're going to do here, we're going to have a bird fly into the room with us. And you are going to make some observations of this bird. And then we are going to try to draw as much as we can of this bird from memory. So get ready to take a look at our bird here. It's about to fly in. And here we go. So think about what you saw on that bird. I know we didn't look at it for very long, but this is a realistic kind of thing. If you're out in nature, sometimes a bird just swoops through and all you get is like a little kind of glimpse of a color or a pattern somewhere on its body, a size, a habitat that it's in. And so you can use those 4 keys to bird ID to kind of narrow it down, but then just trusting your eyes and what you've seen can be really valuable. Okay, I'm going to switch over to a different screen here, and we are going to draw our bird as well as we can. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. All right. Can y'all see my little 2 blobs there? Okay. All right, so let's add in details here from our bird. So we have our bird that was flying, so I'm going to add some wings here. And we'll add a tail here in a moment. But what kinds of things did you notice on our bird? You can either put it in the chat, or if you want to just unmute and tell me, we're going to draw it on our screen here and add to our bird. Okay, I see long beak.
Yep,
Now,
long beak.
long beak, are we talking about like the length of its head? Is it the length of its body? Is it give me more information about long beak.
It almost reached the edge of his wing.
Okay, so kind of the length of its head?
Yeah, like that.
Long beak. Okay, we'll put an eye on our bird here. Whoop. Oh, I'm trying to do this with a mouse and it's really hard. This is going to look terrible. Okay, I'm seeing long yellow wings, yellow underwings. Okay, so we're going to add some yellow in here. Let's see if I can get a bigger. Okay, now is this all the way to the edge? Like, is the whole thing covered down here?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got lots and lots of yellow. Okay, and I see belly spots. What kind of belly spots do we have? Are they a certain color? Are they in a certain place? Okay, and I'm seeing a red patch also. Okay, black on white spots. Okay, so let's add our spots here and kind of all over, just on the chest, or are we talking about on the wings too and the head? Okay, so we got, come on, give me some spots here. This is terrible to do this with a mouse. This is going to be my worst drawing ever. I was working on my nature journal before we started this, and my drawing in there was much better. Okay, so we've got our black spots on the belly. Let's see, I saw some things about horizontal red stripe on the back of the head between the top of the head and the neck. So are we talking about like here? So we've got a red spot. So are we talking about this direction or this direction?
I would call it kind of, you have like eyeballs, and then
Yeah.
if you went to the back of the head, right
Okay.
underneath.
So like
not
right
right
here?
on the top of the head. Yeah.
Okay. So like
And
right
then
here?
like horizontal, so like as if it was like, yeah, like that.
Okay. All right, so we've got our red spot on our head. I saw someone say a back of the head is kind of grayish mullet shape. Oh, that's a good. Okay, so we got some gray on the head. Ooh, we'll add this. Assume not on our red spot there. There was a black crescent under the neck. So I'm going to assume you mean like a crescent right in here. I'm going to draw it like this until you tell me otherwise. Okay. And we need a tail. How long was our tail, do we think? Like, is it the length of the body? Is it a little bit shorter? Is it a little bit longer? Okay, half the length of the body. Okay, so we've got our tail. Okay, we got, yeah, shorter than the body. So we're looking at something maybe like that. That's probably a little bit too big, actually. Hold on, let me undo that. That's not half the length of the body. That's closer to the whole length of the body. Okay, here we go. Okay, so anything else we need to add? We've got a red spot on the head. We've got a black collar on the chest. We've got black spots on the whole belly. We've got yellow on our wings. Yellow on the tail. Is it like the whole tail is yellow underneath? Kind of like the wings? Okay, except the tips. What color were the tips? Black tips. Okay. So we've got some black in here. The terrible tip there. All right, so we've got kind of black tips on the wings or tail there. All right, anything else? All right, I feel like our bird's looking pretty good here. I mean, apart from my terrible mouse drawing skills, it's really hard to draw with one of these things. All right, the beak is black. Okay, let's fill in our black beak here, if I can, without totally screwing it up. There we go. All right, any other things we want to add? All right. Well, we might be
What
able
about
to
his
convince our
legs?
legs.
Yeah,
Do we notice where the legs were?
they were right there in front of his tail.
So like right in here, were they hanging out? Were they tucked in?
You want to see my picture?
Just tell me where I need to put them.
On top of the tail.
Okay, so like hanging out though, or were they tucked up?
I don't know. I don't remember.
All right, well, we might be able to convince our bird to fly back through one more time.
Okay, that's a good idea.
All right, so we've got this. Let's go back to our slides really quickly here and see if we can get our bird to come back through one more time. Okay, so here we go. We were already looked at kind of what we saw initially, but here comes our bird a second time.
Oh, they're tucked up.
All right. Go back to my paint here. Normally I do this in Zoom and do the whiteboard. It's a lot easier to switch back and forth between the two, but we'll do it this way. Here we go. Okay, so what else do we need to do? Do we need to change anything? Do we need to add anything? Do we need to take away anything? Okay, beak was gray. Okay, so let's do gray instead of black. Covering up the black not very well. All right, we said legs were tucked up, so we're kind of like looking like maybe like in here.
Yes.
Okay, we got our feet tucked up kind of into the feathers. Anything else? Anyone notice any other colors or things that we need to change with our colors? See one more comment coming through. Okay. We'll add what we've got there when that comment finishes coming through, but let's throat was a warm light brown. Okay, yeah, let's add that in really quickly. Okay, warm light brown. Let's go. I'm gonna do okay, so let's do I don't know, something like maybe this color. Okay, we'll do this. And you're seeing above where the crescent shape is on the belly. Okay, so we got kind of this kind of thing going. Oh man, this is such terrible drawing, but really funny. Okay. All right, this is looking pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with how much you all saw with just a couple of seconds really of looking at our bird. So let's go back to this here and we are going to think about what this bird is by looking at identification resource. So if you know what it is, don't tell us yet. We're going to go through an online ID resource that you can use or an app and identify this here in just a little bit. So we'll come back to this. But this is our bird. We did a really pretty great job with that. So you have this kind of like rusty color on its face, a gray beak. We had the gray on the head. We had this red patch on the nape of the neck. We've got the collar here. We've got all these black spots. Looks like we missed maybe some of the black spots that you can see through the wings here, but that's totally fine. The tail was yellow with black tips. I think we got this pretty spot on. So great observations for, you know, looking at this bird for a total of 7 seconds. So that's all we had. 7 seconds was all that you got for looking at this bird, and that just think of how much information that you gathered in that short amount of time. You know, you can see a bird kind of just hop in and out of the frame really quickly, and you can get a really good idea of what it is. So one thing that a lot of birders like to tell you is that you want to kind of trust your gut to some extent. Your quick observations are frequently correct. And so, you know, trust what you saw. A lot of times that will help you identify your bird really, really well. Don't assume you're incorrect. Assume you're correct until you see something that makes you think otherwise. And you will be a much happier birder. Okay, so let's talk about some identification resources. So these are tools that you can use to identify the birds that you see. I am a really huge field guide person. I love field guides. I love flipping through a book. I have so many insect field guides, and I only have one bird field guide, but I don't feel like I need more than one. So, you know, insects, there's so many different types and there's so many species. So you need a whole bunch of field guides. Birds, you know, you can fit every species in a country in one book. And so I use the Sibley guide, but pretty much all of them are arranged about the same way. So for the most part, you have your water birds in the front. So your ducks and your geese and your gulls and grebes and other things are going to be in the front. Your large birds like your vultures and your hawks and your vultures things will be up in the middle, like right behind the water birds. You get your really weird birds like your hummingbirds and your woodpeckers and some of the other kind of oddly shaped and kind of interestingly behaviorally kind of in the middle section, and then all your small songbirds are in the back. So your sparrows, your warblers, wrens and things, those tend to be in the back. And your pages typically show you the same kinds of information. So you'll have usually your common name and your species name. You'll have some measurements to tell you how big your bird is. Measurements are kind of notoriously bad. Like if you don't have a ruler right in front of you, like people measure things or misestimate things all the time for sizes, but you do have your sizes here. So if you have a ruler, you can take a look at it and see if that looks correct for your bird. There's always some sort of description of your bird that will give you kind of a written description of what to look for. So those field marks, the colors, the patterns, where you find it. Most field guides will have multiple pictures that will show you kind of the different phases, the different ages, and the different sexes of the birds. So if you have males and females that are different colors, they'll show both of them. And if the immatures are different colors than the adults, they'll show those too. So usually you'll see several pictures of the same bird so that you can kind of see the full breadth of options for that bird. And then there's usually a map that will show you where they are in the winter, where they are in the summer, the breeding season, and then places where they overlap. So some places, you know, they breed and overwinter in the same place. Other birds will move from a wintering or summering ground to a wintering ground and back up. And so the maps can tell you kind of whether you're in the right range for that bird. Now, just because you're not in the right range for a bird doesn't mean you're not going to see something really, really incredible. A few years ago, people lost their minds because there was a Steller sea eagle from Russia that ended up in Canada, and it flew all the way across Canada and ended up in somewhere like Nova Scotia, somewhere out on the eastern coast of Canada. And people were losing their minds. And people from the US and Canada were flying to this part of Canada to go see this bird. So you can have birds that are from entirely different countries. They get blown over, or they just get really hopelessly lost as they're flying. So it is possible to have something that's not on the range map, but it's going to be much, much, much less likely. Okay, so these are a few field guides that I really like, but the best field guide is the one that you have with you and the one that you actually use. So if you like something else, if you want something smaller, if you want to make your own, if you want to just keep some pictures on your phone, if you want to use an app, there's all kinds of great apps out there as well. I really love the Sibley Bird books because I just love the art in them so much. And so that's why I tend to gravitate towards that one. But the Peterson Field Guide is almost exactly the same. It just has a slightly different art style. It's also very, very good. And then this Feeder Birds book is great if you're mostly looking at feeders in your yard. This will narrow it down to just the birds that actually come to feeders. And it has bigger pictures. It's a taller, wider book, but it's thinner. It only has about 70 or 80 pages. So it's going to narrow down the birds to just the things that you're going to see at your feeders. And it will tell you what types of seed that they eat. And so you can kind of tell which birds are which based on which feeder they're actually going to. So all three of these I love. But again, whatever book you have that you actually use, that's the best field guide for you. But there's lots and lots of great online resources these days. And if you are not familiar with the Merlin Bird ID app, it is a phenomenal, phenomenal resource. And we're going to talk about that for a few minutes here because it is so worth talking about. It is a free app from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It does such amazing things, and we'll talk about some things that it does here in a moment. But let's take a look at our flyby bird one more time. So this is the bird that we saw a few minutes ago, and we're going to try to identify this using the Merlin app. So you can download the Merlin app on your phone, and it will add a couple of other really amazing options for identifying your birds. But there's also a website called All About Birds that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology runs that has a version of Merlin built into it. So if you don't want to use up all the space on your phone putting Merlin on it, because Merlin does take up a lot of space on your phone, you can go to All About Birds, and it will allow you to use the Merlin Bird ID app right here. And so we are going to click on this, and this is going to give us only the option of, wait, hold on. That's not what I wanted to do. Hold on. Oh, they might have taken away my no. Oh man, this was here just a few days ago, and I am not seeing it now. Hold on. Apologies, everyone. Okay. One moment here. I'm going to log in with my phone to our meeting here and show you on my phone, just because it's well worth actually seeing what this looks like. So give me 1 second.
Do you want to do it that way, Chris, or do you want me to share it on my screen and you just tell me where to go?
I can share it from yeah, actually I'm going to have you do it, Katie, if
Okay.
that's all right.
Yeah. That's what I'm here for. Okay. Oops, sorry.
This is where tech just like waits until the exact wrong moment to, change things.
Always. You want /guide/browse. All right. And I will share screen. Let's see. Okay. I will not be able to. All right. Can you guys see that okay?
Yep, I can see that.
All right. Tell me, anyone not able to see it?
Well, it's not quite exactly what they used to have. They used to have like a web app version of Merlin, and now it looks different.
There's the Merlin Bird ID up here.
Yeah, that's just advertising the app.
Okay. There's the, oh, nope, that's not it. Okay. Okay, is there anywhere, so what would you like me to do?
All right, I'm gonna see if I can can you see my other hold on, I got it.
You got it?
I think so.
Okay, I'll stop sharing then. And get back to Teams.
Okay, there we go. I can see my screen. Okay, let's do this here. Okay, here we go. Merlin. Let me slide that out of the way there. Okay, so for this app, there's 2 or 3 different ways that you can use this app. We're going to do the step-by-step today. And so this is going to use the 4 keys to bird ID to help you narrow down your options to a specific subset of birds based on the options that you choose. And so you're going to tap on the step-by-step. You're going to say the location that you're in. If you're in the location where you're seeing the bird, like actively, that current location up at the top is a good way to go. You have dates. If you're looking at the bird again, you can just click next because it will be set to today. And then here it's asking what size of bird you have. So you've got your sparrow, you have your robin, you've got your crow, and you've got your goose. And so you are telling it whether you are looking at a bird that is one of these particular sizes or something in between. And so for our bird that we were looking at, it's hard to tell, but it is probably between robin and crow sized. And so I'm going to click between robin and crow and click next so that it will tell me birds, or it will narrow it down from all those different sizes of birds to just the ones that are between robin and crow. Okay, now it's asking us for colors. So what kinds of colors do we see on our bird that we want to be sure that we include for this particular bird? Now, I typically do kind of the 2 main colors that I see, and then any sort of like random pops of color that seem distinct. So I'm seeing a suggestion for yellow and red. And I think yellow and red would both be great ones. And we've got black. And the trick with our bird is that it had a lot of different colors on it. Okay, I'm seeing yellow, red, and black. So let's try yellow, red, and black and see if we can get our bird with that. You can always go back and change your options. Sometimes if you're choosing a color that's just like a little tiny patch, it won't necessarily pick it up when you're using the app. But we'll try yellow, red, and black. Okay, so this bird was, it was soaring or flying, but this bird might also be found on the ground. These particular birds really like to eat worms, and so they'll hop around on the ground a lot, trying to find worms. And this is going to give us a list of possible birds based on our criteria that we gave it. So we told it black, red, and yellow. We told it between robin and crow size. Hopping on the ground in Raleigh today, which is totally possible. So we've got all these different options it gives us based on the criteria that we gave it. So let's take a look at a few of these. We'll take a look at this top one here. So what do we think about this one? You can scroll through the photos. This particular species of bird has multiple different variations depending on which part of the country you're in. So in our part of the country, we have the yellow-shafted northern flicker, and in the west, you have the red-shafted northern flicker. But we're going to scroll through a few photos here so you can see kind of what these look like. So there's one that looks quite a lot like what we saw. You've got the yellow wings there. You've got the spots on the belly. You've got the yellow tail. This is a red-shafted here, so that's that western one. So we wouldn't find these here in Raleigh, but it is the same species. So you can scroll through and see all these different photos. Down here, it will also tell you a little bit about the birds. So this is kind of like that paragraph that you get in a field guide. It tells us that these are large brownish woodpeckers with black barring on the back and black spots on the belly. And so it's giving us text-based information about what we're looking for. And it tells us here that yellow-shafted is typically found in the eastern and northern North America, and red-shafted is found in the western and south. The Southwest, basically. So it gives us a lot of information. And then there's also calls down here. So if you want to play a call and see if you can hear that call, a lot of times you can identify birds based just on sound. I don't have this set up, so it's going to play the sound right now. So I'm not going to do that, but you can click on those and it will let you know which one or what the birds sound like. And then you've got your range map down here at the bottom. And so here we are in Raleigh in the purple section. We are in the year-round area for the northern flicker. But do we think this is our bird? I saw one person say yes, but we've got some other options here. So we've got red-winged blackbird. I don't think it's this one. That's too much black. Rusty blackbird is way too much black. Yellow-bellied sapsucker. Doesn't really look quite right. Still has a few spots, but not quite the right patterns on the head. We've got cedar wax wings. We can definitely find these here too. Definitely not right though. Okay, I'm seeing yes to yellow shafted northern flicker. So yeah, this is our bird. We were looking at a yellow shafted northern flicker, and we can scroll through here and look and see lots of information about this bird. You can also connect this to eBird if you want to share this as an incidental observation on eBird. Basically, it's saying I saw this bird on this date, and you're only reporting for that one single bird, rather than like a whole checklist like you would do for the rest of eBird. But it's still a really, really great thing to use. The other things you can do with this app, which are amazing, is you have this sound option down here. And if you click on that, it will listen to all the bird calls and it will identify them in real time. So when you hear a bird call, it will put up on the screen what it is. And so you'll be able to hear the bird and connect it with an identification as it's playing. It's a really, really phenomenal resource. That's what takes up so much space on your phone though. And you can also take a photo of a bird and submit it to Merlin, and it will use image recognition algorithms to tell you what it thinks it is. And you can take a pretty cruddy photo of a bird and get a pretty good identification of it. I tried this out when I first put this on Merlin with a picture of a kestrel that was really far away that I took with my phone. It was basically just like a blur of colors, and it was able to identify it. And so it's a really, really phenomenal resource. I highly recommend that if you have space on your phone that you get this app because it's just so great. It's free. They keep updating it and adding greater, better features. And it's just a really, really, really good resource. So definitely worth checking out if you think you're going to identify birds. All right, let me switch my screen share here back to our slides here. And we'll finish up the last little bit here. Okay, so here's our yellow shafted northern flicker. And we were able to use Merlin to identify that. I was going to have us use Merlin again, but since I can't use the web app version anymore, does anyone know what this bird is just off the top of their heads? This bird gets a lot of bad press. People don't like them. I think they're really cool, but they're not the very most popular bird. Oh, we can't see it. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm sharing my screen that I thought I was sharing. All right, can we see a bird now? Okay. All right, I see a suggestion for brown-headed cowbird. More cowbirds. Yes, this is a brown-headed cowbird. I think they're just amazing birds. These are considered brood parasites because they lay their eggs in other birds' nests the way that cuckoos do. And so they are having other birds raise their chicks for them. And their chicks grow really fast and get really big compared to the birds that they lay the eggs in the nest for. And so they tend to push the other eggs out or push the other chicks out. So they're not very popular, but they are native. And so you have to leave them alone in the US because they are a native bird. And so they're protected by the migratory bird treaty. But I think they're cool. Any bird that has figured out how to use other birds to raise their kids for them is pretty amazing. And I know a lot of birders don't like them because they want, you know, all their other little chicks, but they belong here too. And this is just what they've figured out how to do. Okay. Last thing I want to talk about. In February, there is an event called the Great Backyard Bird Count that is going to happen February 14th to 17th this year. It's a Friday through a Monday. They want people to help them count birds. And this is a really, really important international bird census. It is done mostly by non-scientists, which is really great. There are tens of thousands of people that count birds, and they count billions of birds on this one weekend. And because they do it at the same kind of time of year every single year, it's a time of year where birds tend to be kind of settled in one spot. They're not migrating yet. It really gives us invaluable information on the population sizes of all different types of birds. So if you want to take part in this, you can just watch birds for 15 minutes. You make a checklist. You're going to note how many of each type of bird you see, but you only need to report the ones that you know how to identify. So if you don't know how to identify a type of bird, you just leave it off your checklist, and that's fine. That's the way eBird works. You just report the things that you know, but you're telling them how many of each of those types of birds that you know you saw. And so you upload it to eBird through the app or their website, and you can take part in this event. And then I'm a part of a group called Science Across North Carolina, and we do 4 collaborative science events every year. And one of them is North Carolina Bird Count, which takes place the same weekend as the Great Back Air Bird Count. We're using that event as a way to get people involved in science. So if you want to earn this graphic here as a embroidered patch or a sticker, if you make 3 checklists that weekend and submit them to eBird, and then you just tell us that you've done it by going to scienceacrossnc.org/events/birds. You can sign up to get one of these badges or a sticker sent to you. And yes, kids can absolutely participate in this. Technically, if you're using any app, you're supposed to be 13 or older, but if you're working with your kid, absolutely have them do that. It's a really, really fun activity, and we are more than happy to have kids participate in this event. All right. Does anyone have any questions? We've got 7 minutes before 8 p.m. More than happy to answer any questions that you have. Or if not, I'm really excited that you all showed up tonight and we got to spend an hour together.
Yeah, this is a really great presentation, Chris.
Thanks. I like to try to be as interactive as I can on these things, just because it gets boring sometimes just to listen to people talk.
So true. So Molly was asking about NCEE Criteria 1 verification. Molly, I will be sending out those forms after the, as well as a recording of the lecture later this week.
And this will count as criteria 3.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We don't have any questions. I think we can call it a night, but I'm still happy to answer any if anyone has any. But if not, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, while we wait for Annie to come in, let me pull up my thing here. All right. So again, thanks y'all for joining us. Chris, thanks for presenting. Like I was just saying to Molly, if you need EE credit, I'm going to be sending a follow-up email later this week with the EE form. We're also going to make this recording available on our environmental lecture series YouTube playlist at Lake Johnson's YouTube. We hope to see y'all again at our next lecture. Someone left and wants back in. Next lecture is gonna be February 10th, same time. It's gonna be Brittany Smith, the founder of Flora and Fauna Festivities, and she'll be talking about nature journaling and how you can use it to actually improve your life. So that should be a really interesting talk, and I hope to see you guys then. Last call for any questions before we go ahead and end the meeting. Awesome. All right. Well, then everyone have a great night. Thanks again, Chris.
Yep. Thank you all.
Thank you.